What are you even doing in this house? You're practically a parasite. Hey, what are you doing with that? My mother-in-law Scarlett threw my belongings out of the window. I retorted to her seemingly insane action. Huh, don't you talk back to me like that. Please pick them up. Then she held a knife to my throat. Realizing the danger, I couldn't move a step. Get out quickly, or it won't be a joke next time. Understood. If you insist that much, I'll leave. Scarlett, who has been harassing me since we started living together, doesn't know. She doesn't know that I'm the one supporting this house. The fear I had earlier is gone. I even feel like daring her to do her worst. I'll give you a week. Leave within that time. Thank you, I said to her, but I couldn't stop laughing. Realizing I shouldn't be noticed, I quickly returned to a serious face. This will bring peace to the house. Very good. Yes, indeed. How foolish can she be? Without me, this house will be far from peaceful. A hell awaits. Thus, I left Scarlett behind in the in-laws' house and moved to a condominium. She would later come to know the truth, but by then, it was too late. My name is Alexis now. I'm working from home, utilizing my previous job experience. It's been over 5 years since I married Ethan. But are you okay? I'm sorry, I never thought this would happen. I'm just glad you're safe. Alexis, don't think like that. I was in the hospital room, relieved that he was safe, crying without caring about anyone else. The thing is, working in construction, he had an accident and lost almost all grip strength in his dominant hand. When I heard that, I couldn't think of anything. Ah, Scarlett dear. Ethan, are you okay? Scarlett had arrived, but she pushed me aside and rushed to Ethan. It seems she didn't even see me. We weren't necessarily on bad terms, but sometimes she prioritized Ethan over everything. It was one of those times. Oh, Alexis, you're here. I just got here too. Well, whatever. Ethan, let's live together at my place from now. Huh? I let out a strange noise at her abrupt suggestion. Then she glared at me. What? Do you have a problem? No, it's just all of a sudden. Ethan is in this state. I can't leave him to you alone. I was irked by her comment. There was no need for her to go that far. Then Ethan said, Alexis has been doing enough until now, so I'm relying on her from now on too. Thank you. Hearing his words, I thought I saw Scarlett make a face. I couldn't see it clearly, but she obviously didn't like it. But I couldn't let her win. So, come to the house as soon as you're discharged. You too, of course. It's not like she needed to say that. Leaving everything to her, who knows what would happen. And you'll do all the moving preparations, Alexis. All of it. That's a bit much. That's right, Mom, you should help out too. I wished he had said more. However, Scarlett, probably not wanting to help, ignored his words. I have my own things to do, she grinned wickedly, making sure he couldn't see. It's probably not for anything good. So living with Scarlett was decided. A month later, Ethan was discharged. I was busy with the move, so I asked Scarlett to pick him up. But it was her who told me just to get things ready. Irritated but still tittying up. It's not done yet. Ha, I told you today's the day Ethan gets discharged. Not even here to welcome him. That's because you said, Ethan, I told you right. This woman prioritizes herself over you. That's not true. I know her intention. She's trying to embarrass me in front of Ethan to lower my standing. But I'm determined not to fall for such an obvious plan. Ethan looked at me with a knowing kind expression. Mom, stop that nonsense. Unseemly. I'm saying this for your sake. That's none of your business. Wait a minute. Scarlett, chasing after Ethan in a panic, was quite comical. It made me laugh out loud. Noticing that, she glared at me with a devilish face. Her glare meant nothing to me. You can just relax at home from now on. I can't do that. I can't use my right hand, but I can't just put all the burden on you. Even so, you just got discharged. I won't feel at ease if I don't do something. Ethan was determined. I had planned to let him relax for a while, but seeing his insistence, I decided to respect his wishes. Maybe start with simple cleaning. It might even be good for rehabilitation. That makes sense. I don't know if this hand will ever be the same, but it's better than doing nothing. But there's one condition. Absolutely no overdoing it. Of course, if I did, you would get mad, right? You're scary when angry. No kidding. He looked normal, just as I had imagined. Well, he might just be acting brave, not wanting to worry me. That's why I decided to work even harder, doing his share too. But I had forgotten about one person who would interfere. Hey, Alexis. Yes. Why, is Ethan cleaning? Did you force him to do it? Scarlett only sees and judges based on what's in front of her. She has no idea of the thoughts and feelings behind it. She should try being in our shoes for once. Anyway, you just locked yourself in a room and played all day. It must be nice to only have fun, especially when your husband is— Wait, what do you mean? Looking around, I saw expressions that seemed to indicate I didn't really understand. I couldn't understand the meaning surrounded by strangers. I was being condemned. I wanted to escape immediately. Don't you get it? We don't need you. Less people in this house. I don't understand what you mean. Everyone says. The baffling interrogation continued. They kept insisting on how worthless I was. Continuously hearing this could drive anyone insane. Isn't it time you understood your place? Shouldn't that be your line? You're going to rebel against your mother-in-law. Isn't this a waste of time? How dare you? I was reaching my limit. I didn't want to anger Scarlett further, fearing what she might do next. So I decided to take action. Oh, isn't it about time Ethan comes back from rehab? What is it? That time already. Then the mysterious woman left. I'll come again. Sure, I'll be waiting. Let's talk more. Scarlett and her friend fell for my lie. In reality, he wouldn't be back for another hour. We were just getting into a good part. By the way, who was that person earlier? I finally asked the question I'd been curious about. Oh, that was Johanna, my best friend. I told her about you, and she wanted to meet you. I could easily imagine how she had described me, probably as a useless wife who does nothing but play. I thought how pitiable Scarlett was, only able to do such things. That's how it was. By the way, Ethan isn't coming back yet. As I was returning to my room— Wait, what do you mean? Just as I said, he's not coming back yet. You lied. You should have realized. What's with that attitude? I decided to say what I wanted. Any further interference from her would be just a nuisance. Weren't you the one who started this conflict? You brought your friend because you couldn't handle it alone. That's it. It's not true. I can handle someone like you on my own. Then please do, if you really can. I boldly taunted her. I thought she would do something by that, and she reacted. Apologize now while you can. I had no intention of doing that. Unable to contain her anger, she grabbed a vase nearby and threw it at me, just like the trash can earlier. I easily dodged it, having anticipated her move. I taunted her further with a laugh. I'm home. Just then, Ethan arrived. Scarlett panicked. Why now? You weren't supposed to be back yet. Oh, sorry, what I said earlier was a lie. He was actually on his way back. Why would you do that? It's obvious, isn't it? Pointing at the shattered vase, I imagined the upcoming scene would be quite amusing. Wow, what happened here? Scarlett threw it at me. What's going on? Her friend visited us earlier, and then I explained everything to Ethan. He looked both amazed and angry. Is that true, Mom? No, I didn't mean. So it is true. Why did you do that? I didn't intend for it to go like this. Watching Scarlett about to cry from her son's anger, I felt like all my troubles had vanished. Well, I have things to do. Okay, wait a minute. Ignoring her, I went back to my room. I believed this would stop her from being mean to me in the future. I never doubted that. Since then, peaceful times followed. However, on that day, having stayed up all night, I ended up napping in the afternoon. Then, sorry to wake you, but could you come here for a sec? Understood. Ethan seemed unusually serious as I headed to the living room. I saw Scarlett there. What happened? Look at this. On the table, there was a broken model kit. It was one of Ethan's hobbies, something he treasured greatly. When I came back, I found it like this. Do you know anything? I don't know. I truly didn't recognize it. This model kit was usually in the former his father's room, but I hadn't been there today. But someone must have done this. I looked at Scarlett. She was the likely suspect. Then she laughed with an expression I had never seen before. It was as if she was possessed by a demon. Then I completely understood. Even if someone did it, I was out. Remember I met you on my way back from Johanna's house? Well, yes. Also, I found this in the room. She was holding a shiny little object. Is this an earring? I checked my ears in shock. One of my earrings was missing. I thought I was defeated. He was completely getting revenge for what happened the other day. This looks like yours, Alexis, and you're missing the left one. I took a deep breath, getting emotional would play right into her hands. Indeed, it's mine, but that doesn't mean I did it. Right, making excuses now. It's unseemly when there's evidence. But still, the fact remains it was broken. Wait a minute. Then he went back to his room. He glanced at me as he left. I felt accused by him and just stood there frozen. Too bad, this is the end for you, doing such things. You set me up. There's no proof. If you had listened to me, this wouldn't have happened. I can explain. We'll see about that. And Scarlett's words became reality. No matter how much I explained to Ethan, he wouldn't really listen. Wait, I didn't do anything. I know. I get it, he said and quickly looked away. I heard laughter from behind. See, I told you so. What? No need for sour grapes? I threw myself into work after that. It was like trying to forget reality. 2 weeks passed with hardly any conversation between Ethan and me. During that time, Scarlett kept showing her triumphant face. Feeling down lately. Something wrong. I know you don't mean it. It's too late for that attitude now. She was unusually cheerful today. I had a feeling something bad would happen, and it soon did. While I was cleaning my room, what are you doing in this house? You're like a parasite. What are you talking about? Such a noisy woman. With that, she threw my belongings out of the window. What are you doing? I protested her insane behavior. Don't talk back to me. Pick them up, please. Then she suddenly held a knife to my throat. Realizing the danger, I couldn't move. Don't move. It's better for you. No normal person would go this far, even if they disliked me. She had clearly lost her mind. Leave now, or next time it won't be a joke. Understood. If you insist, I'll leave. I realized any further involvement with her could lead to something irreparable. Fine, you have a week. Leave within that time. Thank you. That was an opportunity. With a week's time, I could prepare various things, and she didn't understand. She didn't know who was really supporting this house. The reason she could live freely and comfortably was because of me. Get your preparations done quickly. I'll start right away, I told her, but I couldn't help laughing. I immediately switched back to a serious expression, not wanting her to notice. It will bring peace to the house. Very good. Yes, indeed. How foolish can she be? Without me, she'll face a hell far from peace. I began preparing for the move right away. The belongings were manageable, but finding a place to live was the first step. And when Scarlett was asleep, I decided to inform Ethan. So, you were told that. Actually, I have something to say too. I shouted in response to the serious topic he brought up. What do you mean? There's a lot to talk about. I'll tell you later. Make sure you do. 3 days after Scarlett's eviction order, I successfully found a new house, and soon the promised week arrived. Today is the day of the promise. You understand, right? Of course. The movers will be here soon. Finally. Oh, where's Ethan? I don't know. He's been out since the morning. Oh well, anyway, the thought of not having to see your face anymore is so refreshing. I'm going out too, so make sure everything's clean. Of course. I saw her off with a smile. Of course, it wasn't a smile from the heart. An hour later, the movers arrived and loaded all the belongings. I then contacted Ethan. Everything's loaded all right. Take care. See you later. I hung up the phone. I wondered what kind of face Scarlett would make when she returned. I couldn't wait to get to the new place when the move was finally completed. What did you do? Scarlett asked. I just moved as I was told. That can't be. Ethan's things are gone too, aren't they? She insisted. That's obvious because we moved together. You're lying, I countered. You want to talk with him. I put Ethan on speakerphone. She clearly hadn't fully grasped what was happening, just as I had planned. Mom, explain this to me, Ethan demanded. I found out that you were behind the model kit incident. Alexis would never do such a thing. How could you know that? Because she gave it to me as a gift, and she wouldn't do something like that, Ethan explained. He was right. I had gifted him that model kit. It was a limited edition, and I had lined up early in the morning to get it. So she was probing you, knowing everything, exactly to see how cruel you were to her. Ethan concluded. Oh my. By the way, from now on, you can manage on your own, right? We'll enjoy our time in a condominium, Ethan announced. What condominium? Weren't you just playing around? Scarlett clearly didn't understand anything. I thought she knew more, but not to this extent. Actually, I've been paying for our living expenses, Ethan revealed. How could that be? When I was at home, a little thought would make it clear, I said. Scarlett was speechless. No wonder, considering she was being supported by the person she harassed. The one who misunderstood everything was Scarlett herself. So, Scarlett, please manage on your own. I'm not working, you know, Ethan stated. Without you guys, you chose to let go, Scarlett protested. It's not our problem. Let's both do our best from now on, Ethan said firmly. Are you abandoning your mother? Scarlett's desperation showed. I'm not doing that. We used to live separately anyway. Bye. Ethan hung up the phone. Both he and I felt refreshed. There was a time I thought we might get along, but I quickly forgot about that given how things turned out. It was her own doing. By the way, why didn't you tell me about Scarlett? I asked Ethan. What about Scarlett? Oh, to deceive the enemy, first deceive your ally, right? Ethan chuckled. We looked at each other and burst into laughter. This will surely bring peace. About a month later, Scarlett called me. Hey, Alexis, I can't do this alone, she admitted. It's only been a month. You've got a long way to go. Keep it up, I replied firmly. It's not that. Let's both do our best. Bye, Scarlett pleaded, seeking a glimmer of hope. But I wasn't going to easily reach out. Ethan had already blocked her calls, so she had no choice but to contact me. No matter how many times she called, I would keep pushing her away. Shall we move this luggage? I changed the topic. Thanks. Could you take it there? Ethan asked, and then he noticed. Wait, is your right hand okay? Oh, yeah. Recently, it started to get stronger, I replied. I was constantly surprised by his recent changes, but I quickly felt happy. Scarlett didn't matter anymore. We were going to focus on our own happiness.
Don't you dare! You're not going to try to steal your sister's credit, my mom yelled, her voice echoing through the living room. I sat there stunned, my face burning of rage. It was Christmas Eve at my parents' house. Just me, my sister Olivia, who was out getting candy, our parents, and my cousin Nina. The tree was lit up, the scent of pine and cinnamon filled the room, and yet all I could feel was the weight of their judgment crushing me. My name is Sophie, I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. My sister Olivia, the golden child, could walk on water as far as my parents were concerned. Meanwhile, I couldn't even breathe without them finding something to criticize. But this time, it wasn't just words, it was about the truth. Since July, I had been quietly sending my parents money every month to help with their bills, but Olivia had taken all the credit, and my parents believed her without question. When I finally tried to tell them the truth, my mom shut me down like I was some liar looking for attention. I didn't know what to say after that. My throat felt tight, and all the words I wanted to scream just stuck there. Nina, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally spoke up. Wait a second, she said, her tone sharp enough to cut through the tension. How do you even know Olivia's sending the money? Have you ever seen proof of it? My parents looked at her like she had grown a second head. My dad waved his hand dismissively. Of course Olivia wouldn't lie about something like that. She's been the responsible one since day one. Responsible. That word felt like a slap to my face. I'd spent the last 6 months tightening my own budget just to help them out, skipping dinners out with friends and saying no to things I really wanted. All because I thought it was the right thing to do. But no matter what I did, Olivia always managed to swoop in and make me look like the selfish one. Just as I was about to respond, the front door opened, and Olivia waltzed in, a bag of candy swinging from her hand. What's going on? She asked, her voice annoyingly cheerful, as if she hadn't just walked into the middle of a storm. She took one look at my mom's flushed face and my clenched fists and immediately put on her innocent act, tilting her head like she had no idea what was happening. You need to explain to your sister, my mom said, pointing a shaky finger at me. She's trying to claim she's been helping us financially when we all know it's been you. Olivia froze for a moment, her eyes darting to me, then to Nina, before putting on her most saccharine smile. Oh, Mom, she said with a laugh, setting the candy on the counter. I'm sure Sophie just misunderstood. She turned to me, her expression dripping with fake concern. You know I've been handling this for months now. I didn't want to burden you with it. I stared at her, absolutely floored by her audacity. Misunderstood? I said, my voice trembling. I've been sending them money since July, every single month, and you knew that, Olivia. Don't you dare act like this was all a mix-up. Nina crossed her arms, glaring at Olivia. Yeah, Olivia. Care to explain why you've been so quiet about it all this time? Olivia's fake smile faltered for just a second, but she recovered quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear like nothing had happened. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I've been helping out because, unlike you, I actually care about Mom and Dad's well-being. That was it. I felt something snap inside me. Are you serious right now? I shot back, standing up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. You've been letting them believe a lie for months, Olivia. You knew I was the one sending the money, but you just sat there and let them think it was you. Why? So you could play the hero? Nina stepped in before things got even more heated. Hold on, she said, raising her hand like a referee. There's an easy way to settle this. Did Olivia ever actually show you proof that she was sending the money? Bank statements, screenshots, anything? My parents exchanged awkward glances, and my mom stammered, Well, no, but we didn't think we needed to. Olivia said she was doing it. Olivia whipped around to face Nina, her smile now replaced with a glare. You're out of place here, Nina, she snapped, her voice sharp and defensive. This is a family matter, and frankly, you don't know the first thing about what's been going on. Nina didn't back down. Oh, I think I know enough, she shot back, her tone icy. I've watched you bask in the praise for something you didn't even do, Olivia. You've been feeding them lies, and you know it. Olivia let out a sarcastic laugh, shaking her head. You're unbelievable, she muttered, pulling out her phone. Fine, if you want proof, here. She scrolled through her files, then held the screen up to my parents. See? These are the receipts for the transfers I've been making, every month like clockwork. My mom's face softened as she glanced at the PDFs, but I knew better. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Let me see those, I said, snatching the phone from her hand before she could protest. The receipts looked convincing. Her name, the amounts, even the transaction IDs. But something about them felt off. I turned to Nina, who leaned over to look with me. This is a lie! I exploded, my voice shaking the walls. The room went dead silent, but I couldn't stop. You faked these, Olivia. Don't act like you've been sending them money when you haven't sent a single dime. My chest heaved as I glared at her, daring her to deny it. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not this time. Nina, who had been so sharp just moments ago, suddenly stepped back, looking uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe I went too far, she muttered, avoiding Olivia's glare. She wasn't going to take sides anymore, not with the tension this high. Olivia just smirked, holding her phone close to her chest like it was some kind of shield. Fine, I snapped, pulling out my own phone. You want proof? I'll show you my bank statements right now. My hands shook as I opened my banking app, only for the screen to freeze. No, I muttered under my breath, tapping furiously. It wasn't working. I closed it, reopened it, and tried again. Nothing. Come on, I hissed, panic rising in my chest. It's not working. How convenient, Olivia said smugly, her arms crossed. The one time you need to prove something, your phone just doesn't work. Sounds legit, Sophie. Enough, my dad roared, standing up and towering over me. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. If you can't back up your story, you owe your sister an apology. Right now. His tone was cold, final. And if you don't, you can pack your things and leave. I'm not letting you ruin Christmas with your jealousy. I froze, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Apologize? For what? I spat, my voice cracking. For telling the truth? For being tired of living in her shadow? My dad just pointed to the door. You have 5 minutes to decide. I didn't wait. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the freezing night, slamming the door behind me. Tears blurred my vision as I made my way to my car. I had never felt so small, so lost. Christmas was supposed to be about family, but all I could feel was how little I belonged in mine. I drove aimlessly through the dark, my tears blurring the Christmas lights strung along the streets, My mind was racing, replaying the confrontation over and over. How could Olivia do this? How could my parents believe her without a second thought? I didn't even realize where I was going until I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour coffee shop. The bright lights inside felt oddly out of place against the stillness of the night. I grabbed my phone and slid into a booth, still trembling with anger and humiliation. My banking app stared back at me, useless. Every time I tried to log in, I got the same frustrating message. We're experiencing a major technical issue. All services, including ATMs, are temporarily unavailable. We're working to resolve this as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Patience? I needed proof now. I refreshed the app again and again, as if sheer willpower could force it to work, but it was no use. The universe really had it out for me tonight. An hour passed. I was still staring at my phone, empty coffee cups scattered around me, when a message popped up. It was Nina. Hey, are you okay? I've been thinking, and if you need a place to crash, my door's open. I'm not sure what to believe right now, but you've always been honest with me. Let me know. For the first time that night, I let out a shaky breath. Nina believed me, or at least part of her did. She was torn, and I couldn't blame her. Olivia's so-called proof had been convincing enough, and with my app down, I had nothing but my word to fight back. Still, her message gave me a small glimmer of hope. At least someone wasn't completely against me. My parents lived in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone else's business. I'd only come back for the holidays, hoping for a quiet Christmas with family. Instead, I found myself driving through empty streets to Nina's house, clutching the steering wheel as if it could hold me together. When I pulled into her driveway, she was already at the door, wrapped in a blanket and holding a mug of tea. "Come in," she said softly, her expression a mix of worry and hesitation. I stepped inside, and she didn't press me to talk right away. She just handed me a mug and led me to the couch, where I finally let out the breath I'd been holding since I walked out of my parents' house. "I'm not lying, Nina," I said after a few minutes of silence. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to keep going. "I swear to you, I've been sending them money every month since July. Olivia knew, and she let them think it was her. Those receipts she showed? They're fake. I know they are." Nina nodded slowly, still unsure. "I believe you," she said hesitantly, "but you have to admit, it doesn't look great right now, especially with the app not working. It's like the perfect storm." "I know," I whispered, my frustration boiling over. "But tomorrow, if the bank system is back up, I'll show them the proof. I'm not stepping foot in that house for Christmas Day unless I can prove Olivia's been lying." Nina sat back, looking thoughtful. "Everyone's going to be there tomorrow," she said quietly. "Your parents, Olivia, the whole family. If you walk in with proof, there's no way she can weasel her way out of it." "Exactly," I said firmly. "I'm not going to let her keep making me the bad guy. Not anymore." Nina gave me a small, encouraging smile. "Well, you can stay here as long as you need to. And tomorrow, let's hope the bank system is back up." The next morning, I woke up feeling a sliver of hope, thinking maybe, just maybe, the universe had decided to cut me some slack. But as I reached for my phone and opened the bank app, my stomach dropped. The same message stared back at me. "We're still experiencing a major technical issue. Services remain unavailable. Thank you for your patience." I groaned, running a hand through my messy hair. "Still down," I muttered, tossing the phone onto the bedside table. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing for alternatives. How was I supposed to prove anything without access to my account? Nina knocked softly on the door before peeking in. "Morning," she said, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Her face fell when she saw mine. "Still no luck?" I shook my head, taking the mug from her. "Nothing. I don't know what to do, Nina. I can't just walk in there with my word against Olivia's. They'll never believe me." She sat down beside me, tucking her legs under her. "There's got to be another way," she said, thinking out loud. "Can you call your bank? Maybe they can verify the transfers over the phone?" I considered it for a moment but knew it wouldn't work. Even if I called the bank, my parents weren't going to let me sit there on the phone in front of them. They'd just dismiss it as another excuse. Besides, it was Christmas Day and all the bank branches were closed. I tried calling their customer service line anyway, but all I got was an automated message. "We are experiencing high call volumes due to a technical issue. Please try again later." I hung up, frustration boiling over. Everyone must have been calling for the same reason, and now I was completely stuck. "I have to think of another way," I muttered, more to myself than to Nina. "I can't just show up empty-handed." Sitting at Nina's kitchen table, staring blankly at my coffee cup, I felt completely stuck. Every option seemed like a dead end. "There has to be a way," I mumbled, more to myself than to Nina, who was scrolling on her phone nearby. Something Olivia didn't think of when she faked those receipts. I picked up my phone for the 100th time, scrolling aimlessly through apps and emails, hoping for inspiration. That's when it hit me. The emails. Every time I made a transfer to my parents, I got an automatic confirmation email from the bank. Those wouldn't be tied to the app or the bank's current technical issues. I nearly dropped my phone as I scrambled to search my inbox. It didn't take long. There they were, clear as day. Monthly email confirmations from July through December, showing the exact amounts I'd transferred, and the same account numbers linked to my parents. "Nina!" I practically shouted, spinning my phone around for her to see. "Look at this, the emails, they're all here, it's all the proof I need." Relief and determination flooded through me at the same time. Nina's eyes widened as she read over the emails, her face breaking into a smile. "You've got her now," she said, her voice steady with confidence. "There's no way Olivia can talk her way out of this." I nodded, my resolve firm. "I'm going to that house, but only with this proof in hand. If she tries to deny it, I'll show them these emails right in front of everyone." For the first time in hours, I felt like I had control again. Olivia's lies were about to unravel, and this time, I wouldn't let her get away with it. As I stared at the confirmation emails, a wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by a twinge of embarrassment. How had I not thought of this earlier? It was so obvious. But then again, I hadn't been thinking clearly since last night. I'd been too overwhelmed by the fight, the accusations, and the sheer humiliation of being called a liar in front of everyone. My mind had been spinning in 100 directions, and honestly, I was just trying to hold it together. "God," I muttered, shaking my head at myself. "I feel so stupid for not checking my email sooner. It's been sitting there this whole time." Nina reached over and squeezed my arm. "Don't beat yourself up," she said gently. "You've been through a lot in the past 24 hours. It's no wonder you didn't think of it right away. The important thing is that you found it now." Her reassurance helped ease some of the shame, though I still felt a little silly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was coming next. "Okay," I said, sitting up straighter. "I've got the proof. I'm going over there and I'm setting the record straight. If they still don't believe me after this, then that's on them." Nina nodded, her expression firm. "I've got your back, Sophie. Let's go show them the truth." I pulled into my parents' driveway, gripping the steering wheel for a moment before stepping out. The sight of the house, decorated with twinkling lights and a cheerful wreath on the door, felt like a cruel joke. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to expose the truth. Nina gave me a small nod of encouragement before we both walked up to the door. My mom opened it, her face tight with disapproval. "So, you decided to come back," she said, her tone sharp enough to make me flinch. Behind her, Olivia was leaning casually against the wall, smirking. "Did you come to apologize, Sophie?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. My dad stood further back, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather slam the door in my face. I just want to celebrate Christmas with the family, I said softly, forcing my voice to sound apologetic. I don't want any more drama. My mom narrowed her eyes but stepped aside to let me in. Olivia let out a little snort as I passed her, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, "Took you long enough to come crawling back." I clenched my fist but kept my face neutral. Let her think I'd given up. Let them all think I was just here to grovel and move on. I played along, smiling faintly and staying out of the way as the house slowly filled with relatives. Cousins, aunts, uncles, they all greeted me warmly, none of them aware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. As we sat down for dinner, I felt my heart pounding in anticipation. I knew Olivia couldn't resist bringing up last night. It was only a matter of time before she used the moment to paint herself as the victim and me as the villain. All I had to do was wait and make sure my proof was ready. It didn't take long for Olivia to seize the spotlight. As we all sat around the table, passing dishes and exchanging polite conversation, she cleared her throat dramatically. "Well," she began, glancing at me with a smirk, "I think we all need to address the elephant in the room." The table went silent, all eyes turning toward her. She leaned back in her chair, feigning a look of concern. "You know, last night was really tough for me," she said, her voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. "I mean, I never thought Sophie could stoop so low as to accuse me of lying. It was honestly heartbreaking." My stomach twisted as whispers spread around the table. A few relatives were already glancing at me with disapproval, while others seemed too stunned to react. Olivia wasn't done. "I've always tried to be there for this family," she continued, laying it on thick. "Sending money every month to help Mom and Dad, never asking for recognition. And for her to turn around and call me a liar in front of everyone? It's beyond hurtful." Her performance was flawless, tears threatening to spill, voice shaking just enough to sound sincere. My parents nodded along, my mom looking particularly wounded. "You didn't deserve that, Olivia," she said, her voice firm. "We've always known you were the responsible one." The room filled with murmurs of agreement, and I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. My cousins and aunts stared at me like I was the worst person in the world. I gripped my phone under the table, my pulse pounding in my ears. I had waited for this moment, but now that it was here, the pressure was suffocating. I took a deep breath, steadying my hands under the table as Olivia continued her act. When she finally paused, dabbing at her dry eyes with a napkin, I seized the moment. "That's enough," I said, my voice calm but firm. Every head turned to me, some with surprise, others with outright disdain. I stood, gripping my phone tightly. "You've had your chance to talk, Olivia. Now it's my turn." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, here we go again." I ignored her and addressed the table instead. "I've been sending Mom and Dad money every month since July. I don't use fancy speeches and I don't ask for recognition. But when Olivia stood there last night, claiming she was the one doing it, I couldn't stay quiet, and now I can prove it." I held up my phone, showing the email confirmations I'd found. "These are my receipts. They come directly from my bank. They show every transfer I made to Mom and Dad's account, along with the exact dates and amounts." Olivia leaned back, smirking. "Oh, please," she said, waving me off. "Anyone can fake an email these days. You really expect everyone to believe that? My receipts came straight from the app." "They're not fake," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "And if you're so confident, let's check the dates. Mom, Dad, did you bother to check the transfer dates on Olivia's receipts last night? Because I'll bet they don't match mine." My parents exchanged uneasy glances. My dad shifted in his chair, scratching his chin. "We didn't check," he admitted. "We just assumed, and we don't use the bank app on our phones." "You just assumed she was telling the truth," I finished for him, my voice sharp. "You trusted her without a second thought, but now you have a chance to see for yourselves." I crossed my arms, daring Olivia to interrupt. "Let's go and check your ATM statements. They show the account numbers for every deposit. You don't need bank apps for that." Olivia's smirk faltered, but she quickly recovered. Fine, she snapped. Let them check. I have nothing to hide. My parents hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. It's Christmas, my mom said weakly. Do we really have to? Yes, I interrupted, my voice unwavering. We do. Reluctantly, my dad grabbed his coat and the three of us left for the nearest ATM. The cold night air bit at my skin as we drove in tense silence. At the ATM, my dad pulled out his card and accessed the transaction history. Slowly, he scrolled through the dates, matching them to the statements on my phone. The moment of truth came when he clicked into the details of a July deposit. It displayed the bank account number, and it matched mine. He checked August, September. Every single one lined up perfectly with the emails I'd shown them. My mom stared at the screen, her face pale. It's Sophie's account, she whispered, barely audible. Every one of these transfers came from Sophie. Olivia actually took the time to fake her statements just in case we would ask one day. When we pulled back into the driveway, the atmosphere in the car was thick with tension. My parents hadn't said a word the entire ride home, their faces a mix of shame and disbelief. As we walked into the house, the murmurs of conversation in the living room came to an abrupt halt. All eyes turned toward us, the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone. And then, we saw Olivia. She was by the door, furiously throwing on her coat and clutching her purse. Her face was flushed, her confident smirk replaced by a panicked, guilty expression. Olivia, my dad said firmly, stepping forward. We checked the statements. Every transfer came from Sophie's account. You've been lying to us. The room erupted into hushed gasps. A few relatives exchanged awkward glances, clearly embarrassed to have believed her. One by one, they started gathering their things, mumbling hurried goodbyes as they shuffled toward the door. Olivia's facade finally cracked. She let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming down her face. Fine, she snapped, spinning around to face us. Yes, I lied, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I lied. She glared at me, her voice trembling with frustration. You told me back in July that you didn't want a big deal made about sending them money, that you just wanted to help quietly. So I thought, what's the harm in letting them think it was me? They already see me as the responsible one anyway. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I told you because I trusted you, I said, my voice shaking. I thought maybe, for once, you'd support me. Instead, you used it to make yourself look good while I was left feeling invisible. Do you even realize how humiliating this has been for me? Olivia's expression softened for a brief moment, but she quickly turned defensive again. They were never going to believe you over me, Sophie, she said bitterly. I didn't think it would blow up like this. My mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. Why, Olivia? Why would you do this? We would have been grateful to either of you for helping. There was no reason for this. Olivia didn't respond. She grabbed her keys and stormed out the door, slamming it behind her. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of her actions sinking in. My parents turned to me, their faces filled with regret. Sophie, my dad began, his voice heavy. We owe you an apology, a huge one. We should have listened to you, but we didn't. And we're sorry. My mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. We've treated you unfairly for so long, and this was inexcusable. I don't know if we can ever make it up to you, but we'll try. I promise. I stood there, taking in their words, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to forgive them, but another part still ached from years of being overlooked. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, my voice quiet. But this doesn't erase everything. It's going to take time. They nodded solemnly, and for the first time, I felt like they truly understood. The night ended quietly after that, with the house emptied of guests and the three of us sitting in the lingering aftermath. It wasn't the Christmas I had hoped for, but at least for once the truth was out, and I wasn't the bad guy anymore.
Getting married? Then live with me and take care of me. That's the eldest daughter's job, right? My mother said this completely selfish thing. Up until now, I had always been burdened with household chores and childcare. It seems he plans to continue to burden me with these even after marriage. I nodded and said, okay. Okay, let's live together. And I will thoroughly make him understand all the hardships I've gone through. He better regret it. Thinking this, I smirked. My name is Emma. I am 28 years old and work at a company. I was just recently proposed to by my boyfriend of 3 years, Billy. I was very happy and felt blessed, but I put off my answer. It's not that there's anything bad about Billy. He is kind and considerate, has a sense of humor, and being with him is just fun. He is too good a person for me. Why then do I hesitate to marry such a wonderful person? There is a deep reason for this. To explain the reason, I need to trace back my memories. Memories from my childhood. I was born into a typical salaried worker's family. My father was calm and gentle. My mother was not good at housework, but was an ordinary housewife. I had an older brother 2 years my senior and a younger sister 2 years my junior. It was peaceful days. Everything changed after my brother, 5 years my junior, was born. Soon after his birth, my father passed away. Fortunately, my father had a large life insurance policy, so we were not troubled by money. I remember my mother casually mentioning that the amount was enough to continue our peaceful days as long as we didn't splurge. If my mother had worked part-time then, perhaps the future would have been different. But my mother, who had always been a housewife, did not work. Furthermore, it was as if the reins were off after my father's death. And she even abandoned household chores. The house became a mess. Despite not doing household chores, my mother disliked the house being messy and chose to make her child, me, do it. At that time, my sister and brother were still young. But I had just started elementary school. Yet, my mother would say, a child who is free should do housework, and made me clean. She also pushed the care of my young brother onto me. A demanding brother, not yet 2 years old. No way could a child who had just started elementary school take care of him. I could barely go to school, but as soon as I returned home, I was immediately set to cleaning and shopping, and taking care of my brother. I also did the cooking, peeling vegetables while cutting my fingers, getting burned while stir-frying. Of course, in the beginning, nothing I made turned out well. Cleaning only made things messier, and my brother cried all the time. The food I cooked was inedible. Then my mother's scolding would immediately follow. You're useless. Why can't you do anything right? Your brother is smart and does well in his studies. And your sister has a cute face and is popular. Only you are ordinary and have no redeeming qualities. Can't you at least do household chores properly? Indeed, my brother did well in his studies even without attending cram school. My sister had a very cute face, unlike my ordinary one. But why am I, also a daughter of the same mother, the only one burdened with housework and childcare while my siblings are exempted? Why am I the only one strictly scolded for my mistakes, when even my own mother can't do much? Now that I am an adult, I understand how abnormal the situation was at that time. But as a child, I didn't understand. Being called a failure and ugly, I felt down, thinking I was a useless child. Every time I saw my siblings being loved by my mother, I tried harder, hoping to be loved myself. I worked hard at household chores and childcare, but my mother never praised me once. When my brother passed the middle school entrance exams on his own, my mother celebrated by taking him to a fancy restaurant. But the only ones who went were my brother and sister. My brother, not yet in elementary school, and I were left at home. Useless and a nuisance, stay home, my mother told us. And I cried at home eating bread while taking care of my brother. When my sister was scouted as a model, my mother was over the moon, hugging my sister and saying, "That's my daughter." Watching this, I was glared at irrationally. "Are you really my daughter?" she said to me. My mother adored my brother and sister. She denied the existence of me and my brother. Denied us and pushed household chores and childcare onto us. If something good happened, it was because of my mother. If something bad happened, it was my fault. I was allowed to attend school, but I was never allowed to participate in school events like field trips. "You're supposed to do the housework, aren't you? You can't just slack off." That's what she said. I had no happy childhood memories. No memories of playing with friends after school. I grew up in such an environment, and before I knew it, I had been made to do household chores until I graduated high school. My brother and sister always seemed apologetic towards me. Of course, they tried to help. But when my siblings offered to help, my mother would scream at them furiously. "It's because you're incompetent that you're bothering your siblings. Your brother is studying to enter a prestigious company. Your sister is going to be a celebrity in the future. Don't interfere." Whenever we tried to do something, my mother would blame me. Understanding this, my siblings eventually chose to say nothing. One night, as we lay sleeping, my sister, crying next to me, said, "Sorry, big sister." I hugged her tightly, and we both cried. We were just kids, really just kids. Even when I reached the age to understand the abnormality of my parents, I continued to work hard on household chores for my precious siblings. I was provided with food and shelter and was able to attend school. I thought if I endured, that was enough, and so I endured day after day. As time passed, my brother joined a top company as my mother wished and moved out. He seems to be sending money home from his salary every month. And my mother's lifestyle has improved. She frequently visits hair salons and spas and has increased her collection of brand name items. But she still does not do any household chores. I got a job after high school. Unable to attend cram school due to all the household chores. I didn't have the brains like my brother to go to university and chose a safe path. It would have been nice if I could have lived alone then, but leaving my sister, still in high school, and my brother, in middle school, was not an option. By that time, my skills in household chores had improved significantly. And I rarely made mistakes. My mother scolded me less. But she still lashed out at me whenever something displeased her. I was finally dressing up to go out, but it started raining and I couldn't. It's because Emma had a gloomy face. Such irrational anger directed at me hasn't changed, then or now. But from that time on, something inside me began to whisper. Don't think nothing will change. Don't think I'll always be a submissive child who obeys her parents. No matter what was said, I wasn't hurt anymore, and I glared back at my mother. Sometimes talking back. My mother is getting older and weaker. On the other hand, I am growing and becoming stronger. Does she think she can be the queen forever? When I glare, my mother seems to quiet down somewhat. But she still does not do any household chores. I continued to do them because my sister and brother would be troubled otherwise. Then my sister got a job and moved out. My brother, although not as adored as my brother or sister, had also graduated from university and gotten a job. When my brother was 22, I was already 27. By then, I was already dating Billy. I had briefly explained my family situation to him. After all, I couldn't go out late at night because I had to prepare dinner. "You really care about your family," Billy would say, but that wasn't it. Yes, I was working hard for my siblings. But I didn't want to be lumped together with the word family. Still, I hesitated to talk about my mother's true nature. After all, if I told him about such an intense mother, Billy might leave me. Call me a coward if you will. For me, who was not loved by my mother, Billy's presence, who loves me, is irreplaceable. I don't want to lose him, I want to be with him forever. I want to be in a normal relationship where we love and are loved. Yet, when he proposed, I hesitated. What is there to hesitate about? That's what I think to myself. My siblings have already moved out. My brother got married last year and started a family. My brother is working hard, saving money. He says he'll move out once he's saved a certain amount, and that's supposed to be soon. If that's the case, I could leave when my brother does. But thinking about that suddenly makes me feel sick. My head hurts. My stomach hurts. I feel nauseous. Ah, I see, I don't want to leave home. I have to stay with my mother. Because I'm a failure, a misfit, unloved by my mother. I have to do the household chores to finally be recognized by my mother. I shouldn't get married. I convinced myself and closed my eyes. All that spread before me was darkness. Darkness that had been spreading since I was a child. I had given up, thinking the darkness would continue. But that's not true. Suddenly, light shone through. I opened my eyes. Before me was Billy, with a gentle smile. Billy? Who said Emma shouldn't get married? Who said you can't be happy? There's no such rule, right? At least, I'll show you happiness. Huh? I will make Emma happy. Trust me, it's okay. But I'm a selfish person, so I'll definitely accomplish what I've said. I'll definitely make you happy. So, please marry me. Talking about my mother was a whim. I wanted to tell him how worthless I was and that I wasn't worthy of him. But Billy's response was unexpectedly gentle. Overwhelmed by his kind gaze, I clung to him and cried. Crying and crying, just crying. Thank you. Please take care of me, I said. That moment, my vision cleared and it became dazzlingly bright. I wanted to marry Billy. I wanted to end my current life. The time of looking down was over. From now on, I decided to look forward. With that resolution, I found myself standing in front of my mother. What? Without taking her eyes off the TV and reaching for a snack with a drink in her hand, my mother asked, "Hurry up and make some snacks. That's about all you can do." "Mom, I'm getting married." Huh? It was then that my mother finally looked at me. How many days had it been since my mother really looked at me? My mother, who always commanded something, spoke without looking at me. Sitting down, she looked up at me. I, standing, looked down at her as she frowned. Getting married? What about the house? Are you abandoning your brother? I just talked to him, and he said he's moving out when I get married. I see. My mother's expression didn't change as she responded indifferently. So, we're living together. Huh? Getting married? Then live with me and take care of me. That's the eldest daughter's job, right? Saying something utterly selfish. My mother turned her gaze back to the TV as if there was no more to discuss. Not even a single word of congratulations, even though her daughter was getting married. Watching my mother's attitude, various emotions surged within me. And before I knew it, my mouth had automatically said, "Okay. Okay, let's live together." My mother, who had lived a selfish and self-centered life, had kicked my life around. If she wants to live together, fine. But don't think you can live as carefreely as before, right? I watched my mother drinking leisurely and smirked. After that, Billy and I got married. We registered our marriage and took a commemorative photo. We didn't have a ceremony because neither of us wanted one. After registering, Billy immediately moved into our house. Yes, the beginning of our living together. I'm telling you first, don't ever hesitate with my mother. I had said it many times beforehand, but I emphasized it again, and Billy nodded with a smile. Yeah, don't worry. After all, it was your mother who wanted to live together. I'll do as I please. Yeah. Emma, you too, you're my wife now. And this is your home. Do as you like, okay? Saying so, my husband smirked. I nodded and smirked as well. Well, shall we begin? I thought to myself, rolling up my sleeves, unknown to my mother. Day 1 of living together. What's this? Why isn't my breakfast ready? Emma, are you slacking off? Ah, good morning, Mother. We're both leaving soon, so please prepare your own breakfast. Let's go, Emma. Right. Huh. Wait, just a moment. Not preparing my mother's breakfast, something that hadn't happened in decades. My mother was confused by the unusual situation, and I felt somewhat uneasy. It might be confusing at first to stop a habit. But you'll get used to it gradually. I nodded at my husband's words. My mother's confused face earlier was kind of funny. After finishing work and returning home, the house being messy was usual. I glanced at it and went to my room to change and then to the living room. Emma, what was that this morning? You can't even prepare breakfast for your own mother? You really are incompetent. Huh? Can't prepare breakfast? Mom, aren't you the incompetent one? What? My mother probably didn't expect me to talk back. Leaving my stunned mother alone, I briskly cleaned up the messy kitchen and started preparing dinner. When I finished, I carried the food to my room. Huh? Wait, where's my dinner? There isn't any. No. Don't get carried away just because you got married. Who do you think allowed you to grow up to be like this? Whose? Thanks to the inheritance left by Dad, right? What? What? You insolent. I'm home. Just as my mother tried to say something, my husband came home. Welcome back. Dinner's ready. Really? But I'm sweaty, so can I take a bath first? Sure, that's ready too. Huh? Wait a minute, I should go first. Ah, Mother, I'll be taking the bath first. No, wait just a. Ignoring my mother's protest, my husband headed straight to the bath. I returned to my room to lay out dinner. Then my mother started banging on the door. Ignoring her, I prepared and left before my husband came out of the bath, encountering my mother standing there imposingly. What do you mean by this? What do you mean? You don't prepare my meals, you don't clean the house, you let your husband bathe first. What's the point of living together then? That's normal. I'm married now, so I only take care of my husband. I'm no longer obligated to take care of Mom. Are you a demon? Don't you say that. What? I glared back at my mother, who kept blaming me as the bad one, and she lost her words. What about you, who dumped all the housework on a young Emma and goofed around? Aren't you a demon then? I managed to grow up safely thanks to the inheritance Dad left us. We could live off that money. But Mom, you did nothing. Do you think you raised me? Of course. How? You let me do all the housework while you goofed around. You doted only on my brother and sister and ignored me and my brother. You never once attended a school meeting. You never showed any interest in my future, just told me to do the housework. How is that raising? That's, well, sorry, but I don't feel grateful at all. So, from now on, I won't take care of Mom. After declaring that, I walked past my mother. She stood there, unable to say anything. The next day. Day 2 of living together. Emma. Why aren't my clothes washed? Because I didn't do it, so of course they're not washed. But you were running the washing machine yesterday. I did ours, mine and Billy's. Do mine too, I'm your mother. This happens right after I return from work, exhausted, and she's been playing all day. You have free time, so you should do the laundry yourself. I'm training you. Thanks for that. I'm already well trained, so no more is needed from now on. You insolent. Mother, don't you even know how to wash? My husband, who had been listening to our conversation, suddenly spoke up to my flustered mother. Huh? I know how to do that much. If you don't know, I can teach you. Come on, follow me. I'm telling you I know how. Do you really know? First, you open the lid, right? Then you put in the detergent and fabric softener here. I'm telling you, I know. Then you choose the cycle and press this button here. It's turned into a complete joke or treating her like a child. My mother was taken aback by his ignoring all her objections. And my husband kept talking with a grin. Go ahead, try it. I won't do it. That's Emma's job. Just do it. Eek. Suddenly, my husband's tone changed. The smile disappeared from his face, showing anger. Seeing that, my mother let out a small scream. You made a young elementary school Emma do all that, right? Then it should be easy for an adult like you. Just do it. Yes. Intimidated by his forcefulness, my mother ended up doing the laundry herself. It was indeed a scene we hadn't seen in decades. By the way, the amount of detergent my husband had previously put in was quite excessive. And suds were leaking from the washing machine, causing my mother to scream. But we, locked in our room, completely ignored it. The Spartan treatment for my mother continued. What? Cooking? Just do it yourself. I don't care what you want to eat. The old me, who used to do everything my mother said, had become quite strong as a reaction to breaking free from her control. My mother was lost for words at my retorts. Mother, do the cleaning yourself. What is this, underwear? How can you just leave it lying around? Wow, Mother, you've been playing so much yet your wrinkles are increasing day by day. Didn't you play outside too much instead of making Emma do all the housework? Are you even applying sunscreen? Before calling Emma incompetent, you should reflect on your own inability to manage yourself. What is this dish? Is it even edible? Emma's cooking is really delicious. You criticize others but can't see your own flaws. My husband showered my mother with his pointed words. Poke, poke, poke. It was like sitting on a bed of needles. I chuckled wryly, remembering how my mother used to nag me like that every day. And then, a month into our living together passed. Finally, my mother snapped, shouting, "I've had enough." I endured for over 10 years. But her patience is just too lacking. Enough. I've had it. You two as a couple are too much. I can't stand it anymore. Get out right now. Okay, we'll leave. Huh? She probably didn't expect us to agree so readily. Maybe she thought we would beg if she suddenly kicked us out. But that wasn't going to happen. My husband and I quickly packed our bags and headed for the door. Huh? Wait, you're leaving now. What about your things? Oh, this is everything. Everything. We've placed everything else in our new home, so it's fine. What? Yes, my husband and I had actually rented an apartment separate from my family home. We lived at home with the bare minimum, ready to leave at any moment. And now, we were waiting for the get-out command. Less than an hour after being told to leave, my husband and I were out the door. Wait. What will become of me now? I don't know. Didn't you say I should leave, Mom? Well, I've already done more than enough taking care of you, Mom. You never once appreciated it. You always favored my brother and sister and looked down on me. I never felt any love from you. If you tell me to leave, of course I'll gladly go. Anyway, I don't plan to do anything from now on. It seems like you always intended to exploit me. But what's the point of me staying with you if I do nothing? My mother couldn't say anything to my words. See, you're at a loss for words now, which means to you. I was nothing more than a housekeeper. I won't let you interfere with my life anymore. But what about the living expenses? We had been paying for utilities and such while living together. If that stops, it means Mom will have to pay on her own. I don't care about that. Why not pay with Dad's inheritance like before? There's hardly any of that left. You all spent it. Lies. Mom, I know you've been spending a lot on yourself. That's why you forced me to cook budget meals. And I haven't forgotten wearing tattered clothes. Because you rarely bought me any new ones. That's. You've always done whatever you wanted. Maybe it's time you struggled a bit. Saying that, I turned my back on my mother. Wait. Goodbye, Mom. The words I always wanted to say. The words I could never say. I felt relieved that I finally could. I glanced down once, then looked up. My husband was waiting for me with a smile. Without looking back, I ran to my husband, took his hand. And we left my childhood home behind. Afterwards. After squandering my father's inheritance and struggling financially, my mother first contacted my brother. She suggested living together, but he refused, saying, "I can't live with a mother who tries to exploit her children. My current family is what's important to me." Upon learning that the remittances he had been sending were spent on my mother's luxury purchases, my brother declared he would stop them. And apparently, my mother screamed. Then she called my sister, but my sister bluntly cut her off, saying, "Live with Mom? No way, absolutely not. Living with a mother who does nothing around the house? Impossible. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up." Later, my sister called me. "Mom has always exploited you and had fun, what now?" "I'm sorry for always pushing her onto you," she said. Although she was loved by my mother, my sister couldn't forgive her treatment of me. "Let's cut ties with Mom, you should too," she suggested, ending the call. My brother apparently also received a call from her, screaming, "Take care of me," but he hung up without a word and blocked her number. Hearing that, I laughed. In the end, our mother's twisted love was not understood by any of her children, and she was abandoned. My siblings said they were sorry they couldn't do anything, but we were just kids. It's understandable that we didn't have the capacity. Later, my mother had to sell the family home. Apparently, she ran out of money and couldn't sustain her lifestyle. But it was an old house and didn't sell for much. Now she's crying about having to start working part-time, late in life. She's been crying to each of us kids in turn, but none of us are paying attention. After all the freedom she took, it's time for her to experience some hardship. Having learned from my mother's example, I vowed not to let my children suffer. I will give them plenty of love without discrimination. As I stroke my belly, carrying a new life that will soon be born, I think about this.
Useless woman. If you're done cleaning, get out of here. It was Christmas, and I was thrown out into the snowy, freezing garden. Hey, it's cold. At least let me change my clothes. My body was covered in sweat from a day's worth of housework, and my wet clothes were rapidly stealing my body heat. There you go. From inside the house, my mother-in-law Nancy threw my bag, coat, and shoes outside with a look of annoyance. The front door and windows were locked from the inside, and I couldn't get back in. I felt like I was going to freeze to death. I had to do something. My name is Mary, and I'm 50 years old. I work a part-time job as a cashier at a local supermarket. My husband Charles is a construction worker, and it's been 25 years since we got married. We've always lived in a small apartment, but a few years ago, our only son John moved out to go to college, and since then, the room has felt both bigger and lonelier. We were never financially well off, but we managed to send our son to college. Last year, he got married and moved to a condominium in the next town with his wife, Jessica, starting their life together. Around that time, Charles approached me and asked, "What do you think about moving in with my mom?" After Charles's father, David, passed away from an illness about 10 years ago, Nancy has been living alone. Our apartment wasn't far from her house, so we would visit her once or twice a month to check on her. Nancy and her late 70s seemed to be doing well, but Charles said he wanted to be there to take care of her just in case. Given her age, Charles is an only child, and he seemed worried about his mother growing older, feeling a bit lonely since our son got married. I could empathize with Nancy's situation and agreed to Charles's offer to live together. Charles's childhood home had a garden, and although a bit old, it had enough rooms. A light renovation would make it spacious enough for the three of us to live comfortably. We didn't have enough money to build a new house, but we had enough saved up for the down payment on the renovation. The remaining cost could be covered by a loan through Charles's work connections. "We have to think about the future," Charles said. The renovation contractor known to us finished the job for less than the market rate, helping us save money. I am not an old lady, you know. Geez, Nancy put on a brave face, but she seemed to like the newly renovated house. Our son helped us move the heavy furniture, and the move was done in no time. Sitting in the newly renovated living room, drinking coffee with 3 generations of family. I felt a warm in my heart, as if we were experiencing a family reunion for the first time in a long while. When we began living with Nancy, I noticed she hardly did anything around the house. Previously, whenever I would pop in for a visit, it was never for long, so I hadn't really paid it much mind. When she lived alone, it seemed she just claimed what was visible and barely did any other housework. She hardly cooked for herself, mostly relying on prepackaged meals and supermarket deli foods. No wonder I found so many empty plastic trays and food containers in the house before we renovated. I thought to myself it made sense to me. When I asked Charles about it, he mentioned she had always been that way, often using ready-made or frozen meals. I had heard that Nancy used to work full-time, so initially I thought maybe her busy schedule was to blame. But now, even with all the time in the world at home, she doesn't cook, clean, or do laundry. Nothing. All those tasks fall on me while she enjoys chatting over coffee with friends who come to visit. Mary makes some coffee. Haven't you boiled any water? Do that at least. I hear Nancy's voice calling out to me almost every day. I only let you guys move in because my son insisted, but she's quite thoughtless, she would say to her friends. I never asked to move in with her. It was Charles who insisted because he was worried about his mom. He felt obligated to stay with her. If she's having friends over, the least she could do is prepare the coffee herself. I wish she wouldn't badmouth me as if I'm the one at fault. I still have my part-time job. When I'm not working, I'm swamped with housework from dawn to dusk with no time for myself. Every day without fail, another friend of Nancy's drops by. At this rate, I wondered if there was even a need to live together. Being friends with Nancy, they seem quite alike. Oh, I forgot to bring cookies, Mary. Was it? Could you buy some? They treat me like a servant and not even reimburse me. When I brought this up to Nancy, she'd laugh it off. Don't be so petty. Lighten up. Every week, she'd dress up and go out shopping or somewhere with her friends, not returning until late. Meanwhile, I'd be drowning in housework. Charles, maybe because he's busy at work, would often come home late. On rare occasions, he came home early. He'd be drunk and just go to sleep. Whenever I tried to discuss Nancy's behavior with him during such times, he'd snap, "Quit nagging. Mom's always been like that." If I approached him sober, he'd just dismissively say, "She's getting old. Let her be. You might tolerate it because she's your mom, but think about what I have to deal with." I'd retort, Yeah, I got it. I'll talk to her," he'd say, but then just fall asleep snoring. I considered discussing it with our son, but I hesitated to burden the young couple with our problems. As December rolled in, I got a call that Charles had an accident at work. I rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, his life wasn't in danger, but he had fractured his leg. We were now set to spend Christmas in the hospital. Normally, my son comes home for Christmas, and we spend the holiday together. But this year he got married, and I was wondering what to do. So, Nancy, I know this is a weird time to ask, but what are you doing for Christmas? Charles won't be able to leave the hospital for a while, and I'm not sure how to spend Christmas at my in-laws. So I decided to ask Nancy. She responded, "Christmas? What did you used to do?" "I used to spend it with John, my son. He would come home, and we'd be together," I replied. "Well, why don't you go to John's? Your family. There's no need to be shy," she suggested. Even though he's my son, I feel like I'd be intruding on the newlyweds, and I feel bad about it. But Nancy has a point. I decided to call my son and see what he says. If he says no, I'll figure something out. Then I called John on his mobile phone and explained that Charles is injured and will be spending Christmas in the hospital. "So, what will you do, Mom?" he asked. I braced myself for rejection and asked, "Well, I was wondering if I could come to your place." To my surprise, he agreed. "Sure, Jessica wants to have a good chat with you, too. It works out perfectly." I was taken aback by how easily he agreed. When I told Nancy, she was pleased and said, "Yes, that's good. Take your time," seeming to be in an unusually good mood. I asked her, "What about you, Nancy? What will you do?" "Me? Oh, I'll be fine by myself," she replied. I was surprised by her response, as I was expecting her to be busy during Christmas. "So I'll finish up the housework and head over to John's on Christmas Day," I told her. On our way back from the hospital, Nancy and I talked about our plans. It was the coldest day of the year with snow flurries in the air. I had prepared everything the night before, so in the morning I was busy wiping windows and cleaning the kitchen. Even Nancy, who usually doesn't do much, helped me clean the floors in the shower room. I was surprised by her helpfulness. After finishing the cleaning inside the house, I picked up a broom and started sweeping the yard. It felt warm when I first stepped outside, but as the day went on, it got colder. I planned to go inside to put on more layers, but when I tried to open the front door, it was locked. I walked around the house, but all the doors were locked. I wonder if Nancy forgot I was outside and locked the door. "Nancy, please open up." I called out to Nancy in a loud voice. "Are you still here?" "I thought you left a while ago." I heard Nancy's voice from inside. My sweaty body started to feel cold, and I couldn't stop shivering. "I haven't changed yet, and my luggage is still inside. Please, I'm begging you to open the door." I raised my voice in desperation. "Isn't the cleaning done already?" "Hurry up and go," Nancy said, while roughly throwing my rolling bag, shoes, and coats through the large window next to the front door. After that, no matter how much I screamed, there was no response from inside. With no other choice, I put on the cleaning sandals instead of my shoes, wrapped my coat around my chilled body, and walked to the bus stop. My son's condominium is about a 20-minute bus ride from my in-laws' house. "Mom, you're late. I was about to go pick you up because I was worried." My son greeted me at the entrance of his condominium after I pressed the intercom button on the first floor. "Mary, long time no see." I was greeted with a smile by my son's wife, Jessica, as she let me into the room. This is the first time I've seen Jessica since their wedding. She's a petite woman with a cute smile. "Mom, you look frozen. Did something happen?" I told my son about how I was locked out by Nancy while gardening. "Mary, go take a shower and warm up your chilled body first," Jessica said kindly. Her words touched my heart, and I felt like I was about to cry. "Thank you. I'll do just that," I said, and Jessica showed me to the shower room. As I took a warm shower, I could feel the warmth gradually returning to the core of my body and the sensation returning to my fingertips. It's been a while since I've taken such a leisurely shower. I felt a sense of peace that I had almost forgotten. Once I felt relieved, and the heart, things I had been through came flooding back. I started crying again after the shower. A meal was prepared. I'm not sure if it's to your liking, but please go ahead. Having a meal prepared for me without having to cook myself, it's been years since that last happened. I took a bite. Delicious. It was a nostalgic taste. "Jessica, you're a great cook," I complimented her. "Ah, I asked my mom for the recipe and practiced for today. I'm so happy." "Thank you," Jessica said with a shy smile. "It's been a while since I've had such an enjoyable meal." After the meal, I felt happy as I helped Jessica clean up the dishes. I didn't want to ruin the mood, but began to quietly talk about what happened at my in-laws' house. My son considerately asked Jessica to leave the room. He probably didn't want her to hear too much. After listening to my whole story, my son seemed to remember something and said, "By the way, Nancy didn't pay much attention to me when I was little, and she didn't seem too happy either. Come to think of it, we only took him to his grandparents' house when he was little. It seems it wasn't just because he got busy playing with his friends that he stopped visiting them. She once told me to go away when I visited," he added. My son had his own thoughts about Nancy. He continued, "But I didn't think it was that bad. Once things settle down, let's go visit Nancy together," he said. "Since we started living together, Nancy has treated me terribly, but today was a bit strange even compared to that." I felt relieved knowing that my son would be with me. After pouring out what was in my heart, I felt much lighter. I never thought we could talk about this kind of thing. My son has really grown up. The next morning, as per my usual routine, I got up early and was relaxing in the living room, watching TV. I thought about preparing breakfast, but I didn't want to touch the kitchen without permission, so I decided to take it easy. My son and his wife were still asleep. Suddenly, the phone rang. Who could it be this early in the morning, I wondered. As I checked the display, it was my in-laws' number. Surprised, I answered the phone, and a male voice that I didn't recognize spoke from the other end. "Nancy's in trouble. Please help." Nancy. That's my mother-in-law's name, but whose voice was that? "Who are you? Why are you there?" I asked. The man on the other end stuttered, and then the call was cut off. A bad feeling washed over me, and I quickly woke up my son. We headed to my in-laws' house together. When we arrived, the front door was unlocked. Nancy. We called out as we entered the house, but there was no response. My son and I cautiously proceeded inside. We didn't know the identity of the man from the phone call or if he was still there. There was no sign of anyone in the living room. We could hear the sound of running water from the shower room, so we went to check and found Nancy lying on the floor, unconscious but breathing. "John, call an ambulance. Hurry," I shouted to my son. At the emergency hospital, Nancy was receiving life-saving treatment. She was diagnosed with a cerebral hemorrhage, and although she pulled through, she was still unconscious, so visitors were not allowed. We couldn't ask Nancy what happened between Christmas night and the morning, leaving us in the dark about the situation. I started visiting the hospital every day, but it wasn't until a week after Nancy had been admitted that she regained consciousness. By that time, Charles had also recovered enough to walk with crutches, so he had been discharged from the hospital. However, he wasn't quite used to the crutches yet and couldn't walk for long periods, so I was the only one who ended up going to visit Nancy. When I arrived at the hospital, Nancy was still bedridden. "Thank goodness you're okay, Nancy," I spoke to her, but Nancy just silently stared at the ceiling. I received a call from John. The moment I mentioned that, Nancy looked at me in surprise. "Who is it from?" Nancy asked. I didn't know. I was the one who answered the phone, but I didn't recognize the person. Nancy just silently murmured, "I see. It was a man. Why was he at our house so early in the morning? The front door was left wide open. Who was that man? Whose voice I heard?" I pressed her for answers. "Just a friend's husband," Nancy replied. Even if that were true, it was outrageous for him to visit so early in the morning. Besides, it was strange that the door had been left open. After locking me out, someone had unlocked it from the inside, and Nancy had been found collapsed in the shower. Even if someone had come to visit, they wouldn't have been able to enter the house and find Nancy had the door been locked. Also, the man had called John's condominium from my in-laws' phone. When I pressed Nancy further, she finally started to open up. "All right, I'll tell you. That man was my lover from even before I married David, and he was my lover while David was alive too. Are you happy now? Just leave me alone." I was dumbfounded by my mother-in-law's confession. She had brought her lover into our house during Christmas when we were away, and she had locked me out because he was already inside. I wondered when he had entered the house. She also revealed that after the renovation, she and her lover had planned to kick us out of my in-laws' house and live there together. It was an unbelievable story. They say late-life love is a thing, but I wish they would just do it without involving us. In that case, please have him take care of you. We don't want to know anything about it. David is gone, and you are free to do as you please, I told Nancy. "You ungrateful brat. How dare you talk to me like that?" Nancy scolded me. She may have been bedridden, but her mouth was as sharp as ever. "Who's ungrateful? I've been doing all the housework while juggling a part-time job. The house is clean because we paid for it, remember?" With that, I left the hospital room. I could hear Nancy's sobs and curses behind me, but I didn't care. She could do whatever she wanted. When I returned to my in-laws' house, I told Charles everything. His response was shocking. "Ah, that guy. I've known about him for a long time. Dad's gone, and Mom's all alone. Just let it go," Charles said. My head started spinning. How dare she try to kick us out after we spent money on renovations? Can you really ask me to forgive that? I was furious and yelled at Charles. "If Mom says so, we just have to put up with it," Charles said to me, but I couldn't even look him in the eye. "Fine. I can't live with you any longer. I'm leaving," I said, pushing him away. "Don't say that. We've gotten along for over 20 years. Charles tried to stop me in a panic, but my mind was made up. No, Nancy wants her freedom, and I'm going to take mine too. My son is married and has a happy family. There's no need for us to be husband and wife anymore. You're old enough. How about you graduate from Nancy too? I have no interest in a 50-year-old man who can't escape from being a mama's boy." Charles turned red and looked like he wanted to say something, but he was silenced by my words and said nothing. Now he just has to talk to Nancy and figure it out. I want nothing to do with them anymore. Later, Charles and I got divorced. For now, I've decided to live with my son and his wife until I find a place. My son says, "You can live with us as long as you want, but I want to enjoy my freedom for a while. I'll gratefully accept their offer in spirit." Meanwhile, Jessica is expecting a baby. I plan to help my son and his wife with the baby, but I don't want to interfere too much. I'll wait until they ask for help. Enjoying the growth of a child is a privilege of the parents. Children grow up in the blink of an eye. I hope they cherish their time as a family. Nancy has been discharged from the hospital, but she's paralyzed and now lives in a wheelchair. I heard her lover was married, so she didn't want to make a big fuss. When Nancy collapsed, she didn't call an ambulance and instead called a number registered in her phone, which happened to be John's condo. The man disappeared without a word. All the friends who used to visit stopped coming, and her lover abandoned her. Now she can't move freely and lives a difficult life. Charles might be fired from his company because his broken leg hasn't fully healed, and he's no use in field work. I, on the other hand, have been promoted from part-time to full-time, and I'm about to find a new apartment. I'm looking forward to enjoying this second chapter of my life.